Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of The Company You Keep. Great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So having watched the trailer for this, I went into just being like, oh, this seems like a really interesting premise. It has a little bit of a Mr. and Mrs. Smith type of flair and feel to it, which I thought was kind of neat. Basically, I have Charlie, who's from a family of thieves, and you have Emma, who's a CIA agent, both coming out of complicated relationship circumstances. Charlie, played by Milo, which I'm like, I've never seen This Is Us. I've seen bits and pieces, but obviously I know Milo mainly from Heroes. I want to say he was in Gotham for was it just one episode or was it multiple episodes? I remember he was like a serial killer or something in Gotham. Charlie is from a family of thieves. Obviously, I know the actress who plays his sister, Sarah Wayne Callies, mainly, obviously, The Walking Dead, Colony, and also the actor who plays his dad, William, is it Fitchter or something like that? I'm probably butchering it. It's a show he's from called Crossing Lines. I still need to circle back to. I only ever got partway through season one. I know there was at least 3 seasons. Either way, tangents and all that aside, he's got a family of thieves, and they got grifted by his girlfriend Tina, which is interesting. I wasn't I thought they were going to screw her over. For her to end up being the one screwing them over was interesting, and obviously that's too much of a setup for that to disappear. That's definitely going to come back in some shape or form. Either they're going to cross paths with Tina later on, and he's going to try and get back the 10 mil she stole, or, because that might be the fastest way to get that money. But, jumping ahead a little bit by the end of the episode, you're going to need 15 mil. Easiest way is, rather than worrying about, I guess it's tracking down Tina wouldn't be the fastest way. It's going to be the longest way. It'd probably be impossible, but I doubt we're done with that storyline. That's too much of a good setup to just kind of make it, and we're never going to circle back to this. We have to in some shape or form. I'm just curious in what way that storyline is going to come back around. Not unless they do surprise me and it's that storyline doesn't happen. Because I didn't talk about it, but this show is actually I looked into it. It's based on a Korean show. I don't think the Korean show doesn't have it's not like a translated title similar to this. I don't think it is. I have to look into it later. But it's a different premise in that it's a bad guy and it's kind of a similar thing, but they're married. So I'm wondering, so that one's a little more Mr. and Mrs. Smith to some extent. Obviously it's more so those were two spies against each other, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but them being married in the Korean show, versus they're just kind of dating in this one. I guess they kind of wanted to kind of do a different starting off point. Hey, let's see the beginnings of this. That's just me basing it on having read a little bit of the synopsis for the Korean version. I don't know if that's they are already married and you kind of jump in the middle of their relationship like that. Whereas this with Charlie and Emma, you're seeing the beginning of their relationship. So. But like I said, they're both coming out of a complicated relationship because he had the whole Tina thing, and turns out Emma's SO, I don't know if that was her I think it was just her boyfriend, was cheating on her, and it's been going on for months. I love that she tracked him down, and it's the lady that's in bed is wait, you're cheating on me? It's oh, so she had no idea that you were in a relationship. And even he's kind of oh, come on, Em. Can you honestly say you loved me? And it's she wasn't too heartbroken by it. It still doesn't make it any better that you cheated on her, so. Once again, you cheat to kind of fill some void that you're not getting in your own relationship. So both of them kind of down on their luck when it comes to love, and both of them kind of seeing the con that love is. It's it's kind of a con because it's not just that person lying to you. It's about lying to yourself on who you think you are. And they both ended up connecting in that regard. And I think that they had that whole thing about kind of lying to each other about who they are. Because in that moment, it's right, this is probably someone we're never going to meet again. So I get to kind of reinvent myself. I get to be whoever I want to. I can just lie, especially when you are a criminal who lies all the time. And in her case, she's a CIA agent, so she probably has to lie all the time about. So it's a little bit of that thing of you get to utilize that. It's not the best foundation for a relationship, but a conversation over drinks with somebody, having fun. And it's oh, what are you? I'm a yoga teacher. Oh, tell me one truth. It's I'm a criminal. I'm a CIA agent. And they're laughing. It's you were super honest with each other. You just didn't realize it. And it's going to come back full circle later on when the truth does come out. And they're right, you did tell me the truth. I just didn't want to listen at that time. But I wasn't expecting things to turn out the way it did. It was right, they didn't even have sex at first. They were just, he was well, are you hungry? She's yeah, I actually am. And they drank and are, but it's life kind of crashes their little fantasy. But even then, it's like, yeah, they spend like the next entire day inside the hotel. They don't, I mean, they go to like the pool and stuff like that, but like, yeah, they stayed locked into their fantasy, like kind of ignoring the outside world. But, you know, it couldn't go on forever. So reality kind of had to set back in. He ends up meeting, because Charlie ends up meeting up with a friend of his, played by Essence Atkins, which I'm like, what's the most recent thing I saw Essence in? I feel like there was something super recent I had seen her in. I just can't remember. There was a sitcom she was on like a couple years back. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But she's one of those actresses where you're like, wasn't she a parent in something? I don't think it was that sitcom. There was something, I feel like super recently she was playing a parent. I just don't remember what it was off the top of my head. Either way, it's interesting, the whole her and Charlie dynamic. We only got like a little window into it, but she's the one that kind of like throws jobs his way. And she's like, right, she seems like they go way, way back, because she's like, yeah, she's like, I'm sorry about the Tina thing. She's like, you've always been that type of guy who's always kind of led by your heart. You've been like that since the 7th grade. So I was like, oh, y'all go like besties type of thing. But I think it's also for her, she's like, yeah, I'm glad like people like us have someone like you. So I'm like, oh, so is he a little Robin Hood-esque, where it's like, right, you kind of, the whole thing is like, we stick it to like bigger people who are, I wonder, is it a little, it feels like this show also has like a little taste of leverage, where it's like, hey, we go after bad guys. We're not stealing from like, we're a little Robin Hood-esque, where it's like, oh, we're stealing from the rich, but giving to ourselves. But it seems like Charlie trickles that down. He's like, hey, I take some of that and I give it to, you know, my friend, and maybe like she takes that and uses it to help other people who are in need too. Like, or maybe it's just supposed to represent Charlie. It's like always looking out for the people that are important to him. Because we did get that opening where we saw him in prison. I was like, is that the future? It's like, no, that's the past. He's already been locked up. And we find out later on he took the fall for his family. And it's kind of like this debt that they owe him, where it's like, right, we're in this together because you took the fall for us. You went through that hell surviving in prison. Because he even had like this scar that Emily noticed. Like, oh, how's that? He's like, yeah, a guy pulled a knife on me over an apple. And it's like, wow, you're going to lose your life over an apple? He's like, no, he was. But it's like, that probably was a real story, but because their whole thing back and forth, it's like, she thought he was just being funny or something like that. It's like, no, he probably was telling the truth, you know? So, because he specifically was like, oh yeah, my roommate, as in like a cellmate. So, I am curious to really dive into like, what was it that went wrong, and how long was he locked up? Because his sister's the one that kind of has like the normal life, because she's the one that's like, yeah, I'm the one that actually gave you guys grandkids, which I do think is interesting. That, man, this is me reading too much into it probably. When he was getting texted, when he was with Emily and his family was texting him, like obviously the names were like Leo and Fran and Birdie, so it's like, okay. So I was like, it's interesting that Fran would be Leo, and because I can only assume that those were his parents. Maybe they weren't, but I could have sworn that was probably his parents. I'm like, so if that's the case, I'm like, it's interesting that you would label your parents by their names. I just, in my phone, my mom and my dad are mom and dad, you know? Yeah, I name my siblings by their name. I don't go like, oh, sis 1 and sis 2. That'd be fucking weird. But it's like, it threw me for a loop. I was like, do you really just name your parents? I was like, huh. And then I start thinking, am I weird for that? I was like, don't most people just, I don't know. Now I'm wondering, like, am I weird for that? Or is it very split? I've never given it much thought. Like, for as long as I've had phones in my life, and I had got my first one when I was like 15, it's always just been mom and dad saved in my phone. So it's just, it never crossed my mind. Either way, putting all that aside, like I said, that's just probably me reading way, way, way too much into that. But, Charlie's trying to make up for the fact is that, hey, I kind of screwed the pooch on this. And it's like, right, this is supposed to be money that mom and dad could retire with. And now we're kind of like this, because his sister was like, right, we're all about small jobs. She wasn't too keen on the idea of like, hey, let's do a big, big job. She was, because there's too much risk involved, and it kind of blew up in their faces. It's like, right, your heart kind of got in the way, and it's like, let's not let that happen again. So he brings them a job of a church guy who's basically laundering someone else's money, which I'm also like, that seems dangerous too, because if he's laundering someone's money, that someone's going to be looking for their money. Now, I don't know if that's going to end up connecting to another storyline, or is that kind of done right now. who knows? But it once again, it's very Leverage-esque how they handle things, like the different disguises, the different setups, the pit pocketing and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, and it kind of, because I think the show is kind of like a drama. At least the Korean one is kind of labeled as kind of like a comedy crime drama, kind of like a although like probably like Psych would be considered like a comedy crime drama. I don't know if you'd consider Leverage a comedy crime drama, because it has comedic elements to it, but I don't know, because this is just kind of labeled as a drama, so that's why I'm like, I don't know if they'll probably lean into some of kind of like the more like comedic side of things, maybe with some of like the cons they pull and stuff like that. So, but I was curious with this kind of being like a big like, hey, let's go after this church, and like I said, they're set up for it and everything. And the fact is that it leads to them being at a party that Emily's at, because her family's well connected. She's in a complicated spot in her family. Like, I don't know if her family knows. It doesn't seem like her family knows exactly what she does, because her mom's on her case about like having children and stuff like that. Her brother, I forgot, like she was at the party and they referenced like her brother being something pretty important. She's like, oh no, I'm the failure of the family. But she's like, oh yeah, kind of like a data analyst or something like that. She kind of, and they're just kind of like, oh, like, right, not knowing she has like a actual CIA job, which is probably like not too, like the lie she told was probably not that far off from reality of basically maybe what she does at the CIA. Who knows? But I figured there was going to be some convergence, especially because like, right, the way they set it up about Emily's going after a particular kind of a drug ring of some sort that's kind of more, I think, on the European front, but they are moving in here into the U.S. I was like, is that going to have something to do with the warehouse that Charlie and his family were trying to sell to that guy? And it turns out, yeah, because that guy, luckily, the cameras never caught Charlie's face. And obviously, it's like a grainy, not colored photo, so she couldn't tell, like, from the sliver of his profile, you know, Emily wouldn't be able to recognize it. That was Charlie. She might piece it together later. But, yeah, it's like, yeah, let's kind of deep dive into this, because, like, yeah, these are the people we're after. Turns out the real brains of the operation is the lady who works for the guy, and it's her name's Daphne. When they ended up getting arrested, which Emma literally said, wait till the entire crew is there, but Daphne was like she took a beat to come out, and Emma tried to chase her, ended up getting sideswiped, and Daphne ended up getting away. It's like, yeah, if the FBI had kind of slowed the roll, Charlie and his family probably wouldn't be in the circumstances they are in later on, where it's like hey, so, because there's a whole conversation of, hey, he wants his family kind of to enjoy their retirement. He'll kind of stay here. This is what he's good at. But his dad is like, me and your mom don't want that for you. Especially because his dad is losing his memory. Like, we don't know if it's like a dementia or Alzheimer's type of situation. But for him, it's like, I had enough regrets in my life. And the sad truth is, eventually, I'm not going to remember a single one of them. So that's why Charlie feels like they're on the timetable. It's like, I want you to like be able to retire and have as much fun as like be able to live your life up, you know, and not let this kind of be all there is to your life, which that ended up being a conversation between him and Emma too, where it's like, his life is so wrapped up in his family's, whereas Emma's, it's like, yeah, she's done everything in her life to try and be the opposite, like push against her family. So it is interesting, the similarities yet, like, you know, opposite elements to their lives in that regard. But yeah, his dad and mom are like, no, we need to, if we're either all in or we're all out. So don't, because he feels like I think his family feels like his family feels like they owe him some debt, and he doesn't, it's not like, oh, I'm not loading that above your head. It's like, right, I just want this to be the thing I'm good at. But his mom and his dad just like, no, we want you to live your life. Like, yes, you're good at this, you're the best, but we don't want this to be all there is to your life. You shouldn't have to take on, because this was our thing, our bird shouldn't end up being yours. It shouldn't have to consume your entire life. Because even his sister's kind of living her life. She has a daughter and everything as well, so I mean, we don't know what her life is. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're just getting introduced to everything, but we don't know what her family life it's like outside of, you know, her mom, her dad, and her brother. But yeah. And Charlie had pushed Emma away, because sadly, what his sister said really resonated. It was just kind of like, right, I already kind of screwed the pooch. I need to focus on this more and just kind of like get this all in line because I owe it to mom and dad to not screw this up. So he, it's like the heart wants what the heart wants, but he tries to deny it. He kind of shuts things down between him and Emma until he hears from his parents, and he tries to make a point of like, no, I want to do this. Because she's like, right, we don't really know each other. He's like, we do. The fact of the matter is, he's like, I know you're honest. I know you're funny, even though you try to use it to kind of like deflect. You try to be defensive about it. He's like, I know you don't trust easily. You don't trust a lot of people. In fact, you're not too willing to trust too many people. And I guess maybe that, I don't know if that's a byproduct of like, right, when you live in like kind of a spy-centric world like the CIA, and then, or was that just kind of a natural byproduct of maybe her upbringing and stuff like that? Why she's a little reluctant to trust people. It is kind of ironic that the person you end up, who kind of knows you best, ends up being the criminal. And also because he notices like, right, you're very good at reading people. You're better at reading people than they are themselves. But I think maybe that speaks volumes that it's like, either you can make the argument, oh, Charlie's just that good of a con man. He's just that suave that she's blinded to it, or she just sees him for who he really is. From what we've seen, con man and criminal aside, Charlie does seem like he has a good enough heart, So maybe that's all she's seeing, and, he's got criminal for heart of gold type of thing. But, it was supposed to be just like, all right, we're going to do one more big job to kind of make it up. And, mom gets to retire and we get to call it quits. Because I think for him now he has something, it's like, nah, I have Emma in my life now and I want to make a go at this. But the problem is Daphne tracked you down. I guess it's like, right, she's the smarts behind this. She was very suspicious of him when they were setting up the deal from the beginning. She was kind of like, yeah, I don't like this. So she probably saw through the whole thing, or she knew exactly who to come after. But it's like, yeah, not only do you owe me the 10 mil from before, yeah, love sucks if you, I heard you got sideswiped, by Tina, but it's like, hey, that's not my problem. You also owe me an extra 5 mil on top of that. So it's like, yeah, I don't have a lot of time, because she already knows like the feds are on her, because obviously they already have Daphne's name, because it turns out she's the meat and potatoes behind the operation. I don't know why I said that, brains of the operation, because she's the one, home dude who's like drug empires kind of been building. She's the one that expanded it. So she's very smart. She's very good at what she does. And now Charlie and his entire family are under her thumb, and which is interesting because you're so close to this situation, considering on multiple fronts. The job you already pulled is kind of slightly, well, I think I was about to say the job you already pulled has already put you in the CIA's crosshair, because Charlie's on that camera photo from the camera, but obviously you can't see his face. But also, too, you're still ingrained in, this is all still connected to that one job, because they're after Daphne from that one situation, but obviously it's a lot more, so we'll have to wait to see. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how the season plays out. Once again, like whether they end up doing like small and big jobs, and how Charlie balances that with Emma, especially not knowing what Emma's up to and who she really is, and Emma not knowing who he really is. That, right, the key component, they're both missing a very key component that's right in front of their eyes. That's in the grant. Like for him, it's like she could be the means of dealing with the Daphne situation. He's kind of the means to get in with the Daphne situation, and, and maybe that will be the end result. The question then becomes like, how long will it be before they find out? Will it be like a season finale thing? Will it be pretty early on in the season, mid-season? Questions like that, it's definitely going to be interesting to get some answers to. And like I said, like whether like the family ends up performing any other cons throughout the season, and what they look like and who they end up targeting. Once again, getting to really know, once again, Charlie's side of things, of like, especially like him and Essence Atkins' characters, of like what that dynamic is and what that's really all about, and what that says about, Charlie, and what his family says about him, and and Emily's position with the CIA, and what that says about her and her complicated family situation. Will we deep dive further into that or not? So I'm really interested so far, and I'm excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.